The boardroom was unusually tense that Monday morning, but no one expected the coffee lady to be the one standing at the head of the table. A navy blazer, 2 sizes too big, sleeves rolled up, wasn't what caught their attention. It was the calm, the certainty, the fact that Danica Price, the woman they once called just staff, now sat in the CEO's chair without asking permission. Her name wasn't on the door yet, but the silence in the room said everything. Brad Whitmore, the interim operations lead, let out a strained laugh and pointed at her with a forced smile. "We running low on espresso or something, sweetheart?" A few chuckles followed. Not many, just enough to sting. Danica didn't flinch. She placed the coffee pot gently on the table. Then, from her tote bag, she pulled out a slim leather folder. Inside was a printed email, bold font, legal letterhead, a contract with her name at the top, and Julian Aragon's signature at the bottom. "This isn't a prank," she said. "You might want to sit down, Brad." His smirk faltered. "And what exactly is that supposed to be?" Danica slid the document across the glass. "It's called a succession plan." A pause. A beat. His eyes darted to the nameplate, still bearing Angela Ward's initials. "The late CEO. That's impossible," he muttered. Danica's voice stayed even. "She signed it 3 weeks before she passed. Julian witnessed it. Legal approved it. And starting today, I'm not just bringing the coffee." She turned the chair slightly, revealing the plaque she hadn't removed. Her hand rested on it, as if claiming both memory and momentum. "I'm here to finish what Angela started." The only sound was the gentle click of the coffee pot, lid sealing shut. Before she was seated at the head of any table, Danica Price was invisible to most who passed her. Her mornings began before sunrise, slipping into the worn maroon blazer of her late mother, a uniform she'd quietly claimed as a symbol of perseverance. She wasn't hired to make decisions. She was hired to make coffee, to smile, to disappear. At Pendleton and Gage, a legacy firm wrapped in glass and old money, roles were carved in marble, not merit. Danica worked in facility support, though no one used that title. "Coffee lady" was easier to mutter between meetings. She didn't correct them, not even when interns asked her if she refilled cups for a living. Not even when the vice president of logistics once left a $5 bill beside a full carafe with a wink. Most days she brewed, poured, wiped, and observed, always observing. She knew who skipped safety briefings, who cut corners on audits, who blamed others when numbers didn't match. She knew the names of the custodians, the nighttime maintenance crew, and the temps that rotated out every quarter. But the executives? They didn't know hers. In fact, the only one who ever did was Angela Ward, the late CEO, who once said, "You've got the brain of CEO, you just haven't had the seat." Danica never forgot it, but Brad Whitmore clearly had. He'd make a show of thanking her during meetings, waving his mug mid-sentence like a king expecting more wine. Once, when she handed him a corrected spreadsheet he'd accidentally left in the break room, he laughed and asked, "What do you know about logistics, Miss Pour-and-Serve?" The room laughed with him. Angela wasn't there that day. If she had been, maybe the laughter would have stopped. Instead, Danica nodded, smiled, and walked away. But later, in a storage closet she'd converted into a private desk, she opened her own laptop, her own data files, and added a new line to a folder titled Leadership Failures. She didn't need a title to track patterns. She didn't need permission to be prepared. Brad, like the others, thought power was about proximity. He didn't notice that the woman they mocked every Monday morning had been listening, learning, and watching for 3 years. And one sticky note on her locker said all it needed to. Keep receipts. Silence is strategy. When Angela Ward passed away unexpectedly, the building's heartbeat shifted. Flowers piled at the lobby entrance, and framed photos of Angela in conference panels and charity galas appeared overnight. Danica lingered near one, remembering the time Angela had stayed late helping her wipe up a shattered glass pitcher, not because it was her job, but because she believed no one was above dignity. The board moved fast after Angela's death. Brad Whitmore, predictably, angled for interim CEO, slinging buzzwords and promising agile continuity. But behind closed doors, not everyone was aligned. Julian Aragon, the late CEO's chief strategy officer, quietly called Danica into his office 3 days after the announcement. She thought it was a mistake. She arrived in her uniform. He stood when she entered. "Danica," he said, "Angela trusted you. She mentioned you in her personal notes." Danica froze. "She what?" Julian smiled faintly. "She left behind a few transition memos. Not for legal, not for HR. For legacy." On his desk sat a sealed envelope. Inside was a single sticky note, Angela's handwriting unmistakable. It read, "Start with Danica. She listens. No instructions. No formal position. Just trust." Julian didn't promise her anything, but over the next few weeks, he began inviting her to internal audit sessions, quiet brainstorms, and policy reform meetings. Unofficially, he said once, "You're our mirror. If something we do wouldn't pass your face, we rethink it." She didn't speak much during those meetings, but when she did, her questions cut cleaner than most of the executive's declarations. Brad took notice, but not kindly. He smirked whenever she entered a room, whispered to assistants, exaggerated his gestures with mock courtesy. "Oh, careful everyone, the coffee lady's watching." It didn't sting anymore. What did sting, though, was watching systems Angela cared about begin to fray. DI reports delayed, staff surveys filtered, janitorial schedules cut for cost efficiency. Danica began drafting an internal presentation, unasked, unpaid. For Julian, she called it LIFT, listening, inclusion, fairness, transparency. It was bold, maybe too bold. She kept the draft on a flash drive in her locker, but something told her to wait. Change, real change, needed the right opening. She didn't know when it would come, but the building was watching her now, and more than one person had started asking, "Wait, who is she again?" Boardroom applause is rarely the final act. What followed wasn't celebration. It was surveillance. After Danica presented her LIFT initiative in a closed-door strategy session, at Julian's quiet insistence, the room had gone still. Then one by one, heads nodded. Handshakes followed. Executives who hadn't looked her in the eye in months now used phrases like refreshing insight and honest perspective. For a brief moment, it felt like the ice had broken. But cracks don't mean it's safe to walk in. Within days, the whispers began. Is she a diversity hire? Who gave her clearance to attend ops meetings? She's overstepping. Brad, whose interim bid had fizzled. After Julian stepped up as acting CEO, grew sharper. He made loud hallway jokes. Like career baristas playing CEO, Danica didn't respond. She just took notes. But one afternoon, she entered the shared resource room and saw it. On the whiteboard, someone had drawn a cartoon, a coffee pot, spilling over a boardroom table. Above it, in bold letters, "Lift this." Her name wasn't written, but it didn't have to be. That evening, Julian called her in. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "They're not ready," she said. "They don't have to be," he replied. "We are." That same week, her title became official. Equity and Inclusion Officer. Interim appointment. Julian made the announcement via company-wide email. Brad didn't respond. But the next day, Danica's printer began spitting out anonymous pages. HR policy loopholes. Employee complaints. Forum screenshots. Some clearly fake. All unsigned. It was meant to shake her. It didn't. Instead, she started tracking patterns. Not names. Behaviors. Who copied her reports, who forwarded her emails, who claimed her ideas. In meetings she wasn't in, the backlash wasn't a wall. It was a map. Every slight, every whisper, every document, it all revealed where the rot was. Danica wasn't just surviving now. She was mapping the battlefield. And LIFT? It was no longer a passion project. It was a platform. She wasn't just present. She was preparing. The building had changed. But had the people? That question sat in Danica's chest, like steam on a cold mirror. Her title was official now. Her name was on meeting invites. But the air around her, it wasn't warm. She wasn't invisible anymore. But she wasn't welcome either. One Thursday morning, as she walked past the executive lounge, with her LIFT folder in hand, She caught her name mid-sentence. Danica's proposal is sweet. But come on. She used to refill my creamer. Laughter followed. Low, but clear. She kept walking. She didn't flinch. That night, Julian forwarded her a memo. Brad had sent an email to department heads. Subject line: when janitors get delusions. Attached was a screenshot. Her old ID badge. Hospitality staff. No caption. Just intention. Just mockery. Julian's note said only, "Want to handle this your way?" Danica didn't reply. Not right away. She went back to the archives. Back 5 years. She printed one thing. An attendance sheet. Emergency training day. The day Angela collapsed from heat stroke. Danica had led the evacuation. Brad hadn't shown up. The next morning, she walked into the executive briefing. No announcement. No drama. She laid down 2 papers. Brad's email and a transcript of his voicemail. His voice, slurring accusations. Calling Lyft a charity stunt. Calling her a power-hungry barista. Silence. Thick. Julian turned to HR. Process this under hostile environment protocol. Brad's seat was empty by Monday. No goodbye. No email. An intern packed his desk. With eyes down, Danica didn't smile. She returned to her desk, placed the coffee pot back in its corner, and pinned one new thing to the wall. A copy of the Code of Ethics. 3 lines highlighted in yellow. Honor. Transparency. Dignity. They weren't buzzwords. They were boundaries. And now, everyone had to respect them. But a deeper question remained. Was changing the structure enough? If the culture still resisted her very presence? The announcement came on a Tuesday, slipped into inboxes between budget summaries and vendor approvals. Equity Officer Danica Price to lead next week's town hall. Some called it progress. Others, a red flag. But to Danica, it was the culmination. Her title was no longer whispered, no longer unofficial. Julian Aragon himself had made it public. The week leading up to the event. Tense. Silent hallways. Canceled meetings. Not one board member protested. But their silence? It spoke volumes. Danica focused. She built her case. Case studies. Anonymous feedback. Stories, not stats. People, not just policy. And when the day came, the auditorium buzzed. HR. Logistics. Finance. Custodians. Even interns. All seated. All watching. Danica walked on stage. Not in a polished gray suit, but in the navy blazer Angela once wore. Frayed at the lining. Still warm with purpose. At the podium, she placed the coffee pot. Not as a gimmick. As a symbol. Then her first line. This pot served more than caffeine. It's heard every side of this building. Whisper things no one says aloud. Murmurs. Silence. She continued. She introduced Lyft. Listening. Inclusion. Fairness. Transparency. She shared trauma response workshops. Second chance hiring. Audit paths. For employees with no voice. No corporate jargon. Just truth. Steady. Unapologetic. Midway through, she paused. This building doesn't just need better policies. It needs better memory. Because too many people only remember where someone started, not what they survived. To get here, silence cracked. A janitor in the front row stood. Clapped. Then others. Then the back row. Then everyone. Julian waited until the end. Then stepped forward. Danica Price has earned more than a title. She's earned the right to shape the space. That shaped her. Applause again. But this time, not from surprise. From respect. As Danica stepped down, one voice, by the exit, muttered, "Hope this equity stuff doesn't dilute performance." She turned. "It won't," she said. "It'll redefine it." No one clapped, but no one disagreed. And beneath that stillness, a quiet war had begun. Tradition versus change. It was supposed to be just a transitional Friday. Julian Aragon, scheduled to leave for an overseas summit. A quiet handoff. Nothing dramatic. That was the plan. But at 7:48 a.m., Danica Price arrived early. Not out of duty. Out of habit. On her desk. A sticky note. Julian's handwriting. "You know where the chair is. Don't make it wait too long. J." She read it twice. Then tucked it into her blazer pocket. At 9 a.m. sharp, The company email hit. Effective immediately, Danica Price will serve. As interim CEO, no fanfare, no press release, just words and shockwaves. Some blinked, some refreshed their screen, like it had to be a glitch. Others, they nodded. They'd seen it coming. Danica didn't wait. She walked through the bullpen. Eyes followed. Voices hushed. She passed Brad's old corner, now occupied by an intern. Same space, different energy. Then, she entered the CEO's suite, and she brought one thing with her. The coffee pot. Not for irony, for memory, for message. She placed it on the desk, ran her fingers across. Julian's nameplate. Didn't swap it out. Not yet. She sat, slowly, deliberately. The chair adjusted, like it had always known. She belonged. Outside, heads turned. Someone whispered, "Is that the coffee lady?" She heard it, didn't flinch. She opened her laptop, started typing. Minutes later, she was leading her first executive call. The same stakeholders, who once called her ideas emotional, now quiet, now attentive. Legal approved lift amendments. HR requested new training. Facilities submitted wellness upgrades. She approved them all. At 3:15 p.m., a junior staffer knocked, tray in hand. "Coffee, ma'am." She smiled, gestured to the pot beside her. "Already brewed. But thank you." Evening came. The building emptied. She stayed. Soft music played. On the wall, an old mission plaque. She'd passed it for years. Never read it. But now, one line stood out. "Built by those who serve. Led by those who remember." She walked to the window. Looked down. Janitors sweeping, mopping, restoring order. Unseen, unapplauded. She typed a message. "Next quarter, equity shares. For floor staff. Let's build. From the bottom up." Then she paused. Not for reflection. For confirmation. The moment was whole. Not perfect, but full. She hadn't just earned the seat. She was reshaping the room. It sat in,